everyone. I'm Ivy Rivera. I'm a psychic medium, a Taino Arawak, and I own a school called the Ivy League Psychic Academy. What you guys have caught today is one of the free mini classes that I've been doing since the pandemic hit. So this is called the Quarantine Series, and if you want to watch all of the free mini classes, we've accumulated many at this point, you can go onto my YouTube channel here at Ask Ivy. Go to the playlist for classes. Tonight, we are talking about the war against intuition. This is sort of a part 2 to the free mini class, psychology, therapy, and spirituality. How are they intertwined? So if you missed that, you may want to go onto YouTube and check it out. I really designed this class for those of you who have been devastated, let down, and you've really lost hope, whether it be from your doctors, your therapists, your family, your church, your friends. When we come out and we say that we're intuitive, when we say that we're spiritual, we not only get mocked, we get dangerously mislabeled sometimes. And when we start to feel that there's a pattern with that we have no one to talk to, nowhere to go, it can reach a point of desperation. And it's tremendously lonely. And we can really start to tune out from our intuition, our spirituality, our ancestors, the spirits that are there supporting us. And that would be the biggest shame of all. The war on intuition, why does it exist? There are 4 different things I want you guys to consider before we start breaking this down. That is, number 1, you have been indoctrinated from birth into a Western European world. Never forget that. Number 2, we are in a patriarchal, white, Christian, male society. If you're not one of those, even if you are, it's not doing you any justice. Number 3, we've been colonized. So you have been cut off, most likely, from your roots, your ancestors, the original faith, belief system that you may have come from. And even if your parents are part of a certain religion or certain lifestyle, maybe they're all about church, even if your parents and your grandparents are part of that system, they were also colonized. Let's not ever forget that. That is not necessarily your roots, even though it may appear to be. And number 4, we are living here in America in a for-profit medical system. Do not ever let that escape your attention, especially when you're going to someone for mental health care and you're talking about being intuitive or having any kind of spiritual belief. Don't forget that they make a lot of money off of keeping you sick and telling you that you're crazy. First and foremost, the psychological field and the DSM-5, the categories that we have for different mental illnesses, and doctors, psychiatrists, okay, and how they have set us up for failure. I have been tolerant of this for over 10 years now because I've had doctors and therapists come to me and say, wow, what did you do with my client? How did you help them to get healthy? What is the secret here? How can I learn these techniques? And then they would say to me, you are so right. I say the same thing to my patients, but I can't say it publicly. That's something only you can say. I have to stay within the system and hide all of this. And for many, many years, I was hopeful that at some point, doctors and therapists would start coming out and they would start taking more of a lead, be more mindful about how they're speaking to their intuitive and spiritual clients and patients, and to be advocates for the change that needs to happen, to be more accepting of this reality. And I just don't see that happening. I see it getting worse and worse and worse. So I have had it. I'm speaking out. I'm done being patient on it. And personally, the journey started at 5 years old. I started being misdiagnosed, sent off repeatedly to different doctors. In fairness, I had 2 doctors apologize to me for the misdiagnoses. One was a psychiatrist and one was a therapist. And they both said pretty much the same thing. I'm sorry I have been misdiagnosing you, but let's try again. And they would come up with some new theory and some other medication. At that point, my liver was shutting down. And I was more traumatized from this process than I was from the original issues I was dealing with, which was intuitive ability, mediumistic, psychic, empathic, out of control. And while I appreciate their apologies, I had told them repeatedly that I was having psychic visions, that I was having prophetic visions about things like 9/11. And I saved my own life. I saved my family's life. I would tell them repeatedly that I was communicating with spirit or that I was highly empathic. And I was dismissed every single time. I was either told that I was lying, that I was confused, or that I had been to this place before, or I somehow knew ahead of time. Someone must have told me, or I must have seen it ahead of time. And so I do put the blame on them. If they're not going to listen, if they're not going to take any of this into consideration, then they shouldn't be working with the people. I think we need to be very careful and understand that when a therapist, a psychiatrist hears that you are intuitive, that you're spiritual, you can actually be diagnosed as having a mental illness, many mental illnesses. But this magical thinking, as they call it, leads to medication and sometimes even institutionalization. So you are not safe always coming out and saying these things. And that is really sad, because I do believe that these worlds are intertwined. We need each other, but not this way. So I think it's really important to understand that it is a for-profit medical system. And these doctors and therapists and big pharma, they're all making more money off of you, keeping you sick. And when someone tells you to cut off from your intuition, I can guarantee it will actually make you sick. If they are telling you that it's bad to pay attention to, it's bad to feed, or it's not real, you're going to end up with depression, anxiety, ADHD, irritable bowel, chronic migraines, sleep disturbances, and many other things. This is all part of a buildup of energy in your body that is not being handled or properly released. And when I've had doctors and therapists come to me in the past, they have all agreed. I had one doctor say it the best, that he tells his patients it would be like eating 12 Big Macs and expecting that after all that, you're not going to go to the bathroom, you're not going to get sick, you're not going to gain any weight. He said it's not realistic. The energy that goes in must go back out. And you know what? That's not going to happen with a pill. And that's not going to happen with a therapist who's shaming you and making you seem ridiculous, like you're psychotic, which is actually one of the common diagnoses for being psychic, that you're psychotic, right? Or that you're lying. It's not going to help anybody. So remember that they profit off of you being sick, and to tell you to cut off from your intuition, from your ancestors, from your guides is going to make you ill. What can we do in this situation? If we need therapy, if we do need our doctors, when we do, and I'm a huge fan of science. I just believe science has to keep moving, people. It's got to keep moving. Well, we know that 25% of the population believes in psychic ability. And therapists will often say things like, psychics are frauds, they're just out to get the money, they're psychotic, they're lying, whatever. But there is a ridiculous portion of the population, this 25%, that actually believes in them. And we can't prove it or disprove it. Then they shouldn't be opening their mouths about it in this way. That's absolutely right. They can't disprove it because it is real. And psychic ability is something that we're all born with. These aren't gifts. Everyone who is alive on planet Earth is using their psychic ability every day to stay alive. When you feel in your gut that you're supposed to switch lanes on the highway, you do it, or else that accident is going to hit. When you know that someone has bad toxic energy and you can feel it burning at your neck, you feel it in your stomach as in knots, you want to avoid someone, you better follow your gut or else you're going to end up being attacked. And I wonder how many of these doctors and therapists would have their children in the vehicle with them and not switch lanes. Or they would invite that stranger with toxic energy into their house to possibly infect their families. No, they are using their psychic ability too. Maybe not well, obviously, but they do. And so it is natural. And I think that's the first most important thing to understand, is that we all have it. We're all mediums as well. Spirit doesn't care whether you believe or not. Spirit is communicating all the time, and that causes anxiety. It can cause other disorders if you're not managing it. The same thing with empathic ability. There are 4 different levels, but I believe we all have it to some degree. We know that that is often the source of things like ADHD, chronic migraines, especially social anxiety, sleep disturbances. It's important to understand we all start with a base, and that's natural. I would also recommend that you avoid toxic therapists, toxic doctors. The minute they mock you, when you talk about your spirituality, you talk about your intuition, you need to leave a bad review, you need to try to get a refund, and you need to kick them to the curb. They need to be cut off. This is harming people. Okay, so don't go there anymore. Don't allow yourself to be abused, because that's really what it is. Find a therapist who is more open, a therapist who is supportive of this. There are good therapists out there. They're not being as loud as I would like to see them be, but they are out there. Find someone who is open-minded. And be careful. Make sure that your therapist, your doctor, is advocating for change in and out of the office. Try other paths to healing. Okay, if you find that you need therapy, you need to see a psychiatrist and it's not working for you, try other things. Try psychic mediumship, try learning the language with us, try Reiki, try understanding what intuition and spirituality in this sense is all about, okay? But have other outlets, not just the for-profit medical system. And get educated on the misdiagnoses that they're putting out every day on how they medicate, on how they institutionalize people, and have no sign of stopping anytime soon. Okay, get educated, protect yourself. I had a great message left yesterday on my Instagram by a therapist who saw my advertisement for this class, and she said, "I've let therapists go for pathologizing the awakenings that people go through. And I have been fired for questioning doctors in authority for pathologizing people understanding their intuition." I think that's great that there are people who are standing up like that. And I appreciated her comment very much. We need more of those therapists. I do want to move on to another category here, and that is the cults of church and religions that have come in and taken over, forced mass numbers of people into their religious systems. I believe that any organization that uses fear to force people to stay is a cult. I don't look at church as being any different, whether I have Christian Catholic roots myself or not. It absolutely is that, because it is based on fear. I think that we need to take a more serious look at how the roots of most religions, churches, are based on colonization, and how dangerous that is for you as an intuitive, as a spiritual being here on earth, having a human experience, to be cut off from your ancestors, your original faith, and to be forced into some weird culty religion that teaches you that you can't connect with God directly, a priest has to do it. Someone in the hierarchy has to do it. They hold all the authority. And that if you even tap into it a little bit, you're playing with the devil, you're going to hell, you're a Satan worshiper. This is not only ridiculous, it is super dangerous. And I have never seen any sign as of today, okay, that these religions, these churches plan to become more open-minded. If anything, again, just like Big Pharma and psychology and therapy, I've seen them bear down. It's getting worse. So we need to be realistic. The best way for you to look at your church, your religion, is to understand that they've been lying to you by telling you that you have to go to someone in a position of hierarchy in the church to connect with God. Spirit is communicating with you all the time. And your higher mind is connected to the universe, to wisdom of the universe, and your ancestors, your guides, God, angels. You don't need anyone to give you permission to tap into that. We also have to be realistic that they clearly know nothing about dark energies in the world, or Satan or the devil or hell or anything. If that's really what they believe, if they believe it's that easy to be overcome by Satan, dark forces in the universe, then they have no business being in a position of leadership or power. Because discernment is key when using your intuition and when communicating with spirit. So these people sound uneducated and unsafe. Unsafe to lead in a major way. You can do that yourself. I also want to remind everyone, for all the Christians out there, Catholics, whatever denomination you may be, that there is one book, an English version of the Bible left, where in the Old Testament, we had training manuals for mediums, for prophets, for the psychics in the books of Solomon. It was normal to have prophets. And in the 70s, we sort of saw a revitalization of all of this, right? The prophets came out. And we're seeing some of that now in some churches to a degree. But those books, those training manuals for the mediums and the prophets were removed. And in the New Testament, we were put with devil worshipers, rapists, thieves, and murderers. It's so sad to see something like that happen. A book that was meant to be beautiful and perpetuate love. Well, that killed it, in my opinion. So let's be realistic about what we're reading and what we're believing in. Something that has been manipulated by white men in power. That's all that's left of it at this point. What we can do, if it's hard for you to leave your church, if it's hard for you to leave your community, your faith, and you know that if you step out, you can lose family, you can lose friends, you can lose everything. I think it's important to realize that you can, upon leaving, create a new system of support. When one door closes, 6 more open. Every time the bus stops, somebody's got to get off. If you have to be cut off by these people, it wasn't love anyways. And you will make room for new members to come in. So anyone who mocks your faith really doesn't belong in your life journey beyond where they are right now. Accept that, embrace that, and replace it with what your ancestral roots may be. Okay, do some digging into your heritage. Do some digging into your great-great-grandparents. You know, a lot of you are native, indigenous, you didn't even know. There can be such a rich history there. And you're just like a robot going along with this system. Look, dig, find out. And for those of you who don't know about your roots and you desperately wish that you did, don't worry. You don't need to know, because Spirit is always working with you. Sit quietly 10 to 20 minutes a day and ask your guides to show you what you should get involved with, or who you should get involved with, and how you can grow spiritually. You don't need to look out here. It's okay to just go in here. They will be there. And don't forget, your ancestors are always reaching out. Whether you know your tribe or not, they're always there. That's how it works. Don't let anybody tell you any different. I want to talk about one more area before I get on to some of the questions and things we have here. And that is our brainwashed society as a whole. This is the perpetuating factor in all of this, right? Because these toxic systems can't survive without support from the masses. So we have all of these sheep that are brainwashed who just feed the problem by mocking intuition, mocking spirituality, feeding the patriarchy, feeding colonization. And some of us are even doing it unwittingly. We're doing it accidentally. Great example of this is the way people come to me every day and they say to me, well, I can't talk to anybody else this way. I got to tell you what's happening with me. I don't want to seem crazy. I'm like, oh, thank you very much. You know, what a slap in the face to come to me for help, to come to me for healing and say that I seem crazy, that what I talk about and believe in and teach about is insane, and that they're so embarrassed to admit that they're a part of it in any way that they hide it every day. Like, I can't think of a bigger insult. And this is every day, all day. People talk like this. So we need to start changing our speech. And you need to stand up when you are out there, okay, in the world, and you hear people being ignorant, or you talk about a belief that you have in something. We need to start biting back. This is enough. We need to change this dialogue, okay? This toxic rhetoric of stigma is absolutely ridiculous and seen as perfectly acceptable, that it's just fine to act that way. We have been labeled as intuitives, as fraudulent, as thieves, as money mongers. No matter how much we give, no matter how of service we may be, we are always stuck with that label. And it leads into an attitude against us of suspicion, accusation, okay, abuse. But it really allows us, on a lighter note, just to be mocked and dismissed as a whole, which is also dangerous for other people because we're just trying to help. Okay, so don't listen. Fall in a hole. I don't care. Take my advice. Don't take my advice. No skin off my nose. I can help you. You can lead a horse to water, take it or leave it. But if you're going to dismiss the wisdom that healers are giving you, it puts you in a dangerous position. Okay, because you've decided that they are laughable in some way. We're also penalized. So great example of this, and this is how the system makes more money off of us. If I, for example, wanted to go and advertise that I give readings or that I'm holding a psychic fair or a spiritual event, right? If I wanted to go advertise that in a newspaper, I am forced to pay extra money to put in bold print at the bottom of my advertisement, which sucks up a lot of room too, but I'm forced to put it on there, that I have to say for entertainment purposes only. Okay, this isn't fair. Nobody else has to do this. They have taken what is honest, pure work, and it's automatically suggested that it's fraudulent in some way, that it's for show. And that could not be further from the truth. I don't train my students that way. I don't do anything for show. What does all this toxic rhetoric do as we're all feeding it? Well, it forces people who do want to authentically be themselves, who are intuitive, who are going through increases with their intuition and spirituality, sometimes even to a point of it being painful, literally painful. And it forces them to stay in the closet because they don't want to be laughed at, or they don't want to be abandoned. They don't want to lose family and friends and support. at a time like that. So we also need to reach out more, I think, to people who are going through that kind of change and don't know where to turn. So what can we do? What can we do about this? We can watch our mouths, be more careful with the words that we use. Don't ever refer to your intuition as being something crazy, because literally people are being medicated and institutionalized for it, okay? It's dangerous to label it as that. It's not crazy, open-minded, it's different, it's new, it's curious, but it's not a sign of mental illness. So let's be careful. We also need to show more appreciation for it. If you have a reader, if you have a healer in your life, they may not be okay. Tell them that you appreciate them. Show some respect. And if they post something that you feel is advantageous for other people, if they're shining the light, help them. Don't be so shy. Don't be so embarrassed that you believe that you won't give it a heart, you won't give it a share, you won't put a comment, you won't put yourself out there. Encourage. If these people are feeding your soul all the time, they're feeding your spirit, helping you to get well, act like it. Okay, let's stop hiding where we go to eat. I can't believe the number of people who come to me behind closed doors. Doctors, therapists, lawyers, teachers. People come here. But it's like pulling teeth, getting them to ever admit that they've ever even spoken to me once. That is disgraceful behavior. So show appreciation. The more you shine your light and stand out, you are yourself. The closer in spirit is going to come. The more the universe is going to support you, because you are being of service to the light. And the more other people will be willing to shine with you and come out and be themselves. We need more leaders in light work today. But first and foremost, I would say this to everyone: get educated, get educated, get educated on how society looks at spirituality and intuition. Understand all of the stigmas. Understand, too, that we have, as spiritual beings that came to Earth, our own science. And we don't need anyone else's science that's making us sick to come in and negate what we already know. We know. We have a higher mind. We are connected to spirit. We are connected to the universe. And it is in you already. You don't need to be told. Okay? Especially if it's making things worse. Be introspective. Go in here before you go to anyone else to help you.
I tried therapy and she devalued my intuitive thinking, and she couldn't help me and reverted to suggesting medication. I had an amazing reading that confirmed my indigenous heritage and validated everything I needed in one session. The medical system is corrupt and not for people like us.
Well, that's a strong statement, Kelly, and I appreciate you sharing that. So, yeah, she went to a therapist. She said she got mocked and they tried to medicate her. They dismissed her intuition. She went and got a reading afterward and it healed her life. And I hear stuff like that all the time. People will say to me, this saved me 7 years of therapy, or this was better than the 10, 15 years of therapy I went to, or whatever. And that's because it is. If you've got a good therapist, amen, share with the rest of us. But when it's toxic like that, it keeps you in a stagnant cycle, and you go to an actual healer, an actual reader, a real light worker, and they help you to put your life in order and understand your own abilities. It's like there is nothing bigger in the world. Like there is nothing more important than this. This is the basic foundation to starting your life. And so to embrace that is huge. So I love that too. I love that she found out too she had indigenous roots. That's beautiful. I do want to read one from one of our members here. Alex says, what's going on with schizophrenia? If you see things when you're a child. Well, when we're 3 years old, we start tapping into certain brain waves. These brain waves allow us to see the spirits with our eyes and hear the spirits with our ears. At 5 and 6 years old, the right side of the brain develops more, and we start to hear the spirits in our head, clairaudience, as though it is our own thought, and we start to see the spirits in our mind's eye, clairvoyance. And what's happening with a lot of people who have schizophrenia or have been misdiagnosed with having schizophrenia, or people with dementia, people with Alzheimer's, it's all really very similar. If you're a medium, and you know the language, you could sit next to them and understand that they're seeing and hearing what a 3-year-old would have, essentially. They don't know how to control it, and they're never given an option to control it, right? They're put on meds, or they're diagnosed as schizophrenic. There's no teaching of the intuitive language in the therapeutic world. So when I sit next to someone in a hospital, an infirmary, whatever, and they're struggling with these mental health issues and they're talking to spirits, as a medium, I know exactly who they're talking to. And I'm just making the choice, because I'm educated, not to talk to them, not to be controlled by them. But without knowing and without being empowered with the right tools, we're all susceptible to things like this.
You described all my medical issues until I started taking your classes, and all are gone now.
I've had many students over the years come and say that they were on meds for 15 years, longer than that, or they had been diagnosed with things, but they never seemed to get well. And that after taking classes for a few months, they no longer have health issues. So this is not at all uncommon to hear. And that's because what I'm teaching you here through empathic awareness and the psychic mediumship course, learning the language and these things, you are learning how to manage the energies, the root cause of what could be increasing some of these potential disorders like anxiety and depression, right? ADHD. And without that, we can't get there. Again, no amount of therapy, no amount of medication or hospitalization is going to get you there. We have to get to the root of it and to understand our intuition to control it. I also see some students who say, my meds are finally working. I feel like I need them, but finally I'm having some breakthroughs, and that's awesome.
Rachel said, this is so needed. I have been ghosted so many times, and doctors treat you poorly if it's brought up.
Yeah, it's really sad to go into a doctor for help and to have them look at you with a crooked eye. Oh, I don't know what's worse, being labeled as like psychotic or a liar when neither are true. It's just a really lonely feeling, and it's scary how relentless they can be at spitting out one diagnosis and giving a medication and another one and a medication, and oops, I was wrong. Here's another one and a medication, instead of just admitting, I honestly don't know what's going on. And you say, yeah, because you've never diagnosed me as a medium or a psychic or an empath, but just admit it. If you don't know what's going on with people, don't mock their faith. Don't mock what they're telling you. You have to allow for some fluidity, even with the DSM. I think there needs to be some open-mindedness there.
Melissa on TikTok said that her nephew has bipolar, and she's often thought exactly what you just said.
About being able to hear the same spirits and understand how the energy gets out of control. And bipolar is the most common misdiagnoses when we see empaths hit the 3rd and the 4th levels. So what you may want to do is check out the Empathic Kids class. It's up in my bio in the link tree for Ivy Rivera, Empathic Educator. But it's phenomenal to see whether it's adult onset or it's a kid. When we hit that 3rd and 4th level of empathic ability, things like the anxiety and the depression take on a whole new tone. And that is sadly where we lose a lot of our people, not just people who intend to use it as light work, but everyday average individuals who may never do much with their healing abilities. And that's fine, but they deserve to be healthy.
Natalie said she was diagnosed with bipolar with psychotic features, and the meds really messed her up.
So yeah, that's happened to me before. I've been diagnosed with things where I was put on medication that was causing me to hallucinate, which is interesting, right? So I'm being accused of hallucinating when I can prove, like 9/11, the towers did go down, and I will predict someone's death. Well, they did end up dying. Then they put me on these medications that cause hallucinations, and ultimately what I thought was my liver maybe shutting down just from so much garbage in my system. But they are relentless. On to the next, on to the next, on to the next, willing to pollute me and not ever listen to me. Thank you for sharing that. It's a common experience. Not enough of us are coming out and talking about it Because again, there's a shame element, or we think in the back of our minds, wow, maybe there is something wrong. I would say this: never adopt that until you've researched this. And even if it is a disorder that you have, even if it is a mental illness that you have, you are still going to need to learn how to manage these energies. So this is for everybody.
Jill said two things here. One, that she had a conversation with a doctor who said ADHD meds were so harmless they should be available over the counter with no prescription or physical necessary.
I do believe ADHD meds, I don't know like all of them, but they're highly addictive. So are a lot of the anti-anxiety meds. And here in New York State, a 14-year-old can go and get them without parental consent and without therapy. And I know some people will say, no, therapy is required. Okay, well, if that is true, half the parents are being told something else and no one's enforcing it. There is a system here, a profit system that is vulturing upon the children. What 14-year-old doesn't see a friend who's maybe getting those meds and they make them feel high and they're addictive and they can just go get them themselves? You call the doctor's office, the pediatrician, and there's a hotline to get your ADHD refill meds. They're starting them young. It's big pharma. It's for profit.
She said that her daughter said to her that being spiritual is so trendy now, there's a lot of misinformation out there that is actually dark and masked as its light. Kids out there without training or supervision and opening doors to a world they can't deal with or recognize as an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know that that's new. I would say that dark arts have always been out there, but because of the awakening with the pandemic, over the last couple years, we have seen more and more people come into the spiritual field, and there are a ton of dark arts because they're not properly trained. They know nothing about discernment, and there are a lot of people that think they can make more money off of it by tapping into darker energies. One of the common things I get from some of the older men in this field is always like, hey, little girl, you're working with half the toolbox if you're not working with the darker energies. And I'm like, you are the problem. That's gross. There's no need to do that. We have everything that we need, everything that we should need, tapping into the light. That is ultimately where we're supposed to go in everything. High versus low, right? That's the nature of the human experience and the universe. Or else we see chaos and destruction. And there is an increase in it just by numbers reproducing the way they are, but it's really always been there. And absolutely, it's important for children at a young age. I start training mine at 3. We train children here to get a handle on it so that no one else can shame them, especially at school, and so that they understand what spirits they should be communicating with and which ones they need to set boundaries with and say, absolutely not, no way. So 3, 4, 5, 6, the perfect age.
Deb says that her rheumatologist says Reiki is pseudoscience, and she laughed at him.
Reiki is pseudoscience. Yeah, okay. Well, let's see where he runs when he's not doing well. It's funny to me that everyone in the end, or when they're in trouble, they show up here. That's really interesting. And we need to stop looking for some proof in the science. I think we've already come to an understanding that the science isn't catching up because it's profitable not to. I'm not waiting on some scientific proof that something works. It works a whole lot better than what they're dishing out. That's for sure. All right, guys, it was a pleasure. Donations are appreciated. If you haven't already left any, I saw some people did, and I'm very grateful for that. If you want to check out the last class that was sort of a part 1 to this, it's called Psychology, Therapy, and Spirituality. How are they intertwined? And that is here on YouTube in the playlist. Please hit this thumbs up button for this video, everyone. Feel free to subscribe. And if you want to become a member for behind the scenes extras, your monthly horoscope, direct spirit messages, all kinds of things, you can hit the join button. Our next free mini class is going to be Shadow Work Part 2. So you can go through the playlist and watch the original. This is with Christina Del Rey, our astrologer here at the Academy, and myself. And we'll be talking about secrets, karma, and contracts. Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Spirit. Have a great night, everybody.